Arthur Hayes, the guy who co-founded BitMEX and has been right about crypto more times than anyone wants to admit, just put out a $250,000 Bitcoin price target for the end of this year. Not 2027, not 2030, this year. And here's the kicker. It's not based on hopium or technical analysis. It's based on a political chess move happening right now at the Federal Reserve that most people don't even know exists. It's called presidential poker, and Trump is about to go all in. Quick disclaimer. This is purely educational content, not financial advice. Do your own research and never invest more than you can afford to lose. Look, I know what you're thinking. Another crypto bro with a wild price prediction. But stick with me because what's happening behind the scenes at the Fed isn't crypto speculation. It's political math. And math doesn't care about your feelings. Here's something wild that you won't hear on CNBC. The Federal Reserve isn't actually as independent as they want you to think. There are two boards that control monetary policy, and Trump needs just 4 votes out of 7 on one board to essentially control the entire central bank. 4 and 7. That's the winning hand in what insiders are calling presidential poker. Get 4 votes on the Board of Governors, and you can pack the other committee with 7 people who agree with your monetary policy. Game over. This isn't conspiracy theory stuff. This is literally how the Fed is structured. And right now, Trump is 1 vote away from controlling the money printer. But here's where it gets absolutely wild, because controlling the Fed isn't just about interest rates. Once Trump has control of the Fed boards, here's what happens. They can steepen the yield curve, which sounds boring but is actually insane. They drop rates on the short end, which makes regional banks suddenly very interested in lending money. Not to Wall Street hedge funds. To Main Street America. Farms, factories, small businesses. The stuff that actually hires people and creates economic growth. This is what some people are calling QE for poor people, instead of QE for rich people. And here's the brutal math. When the Fed prints money and hands it to Wall Street, it just inflates asset prices. When regional banks create loans for actual businesses, the money multiplier effect kicks in. Employees get paid, they spend money, it circulates through the economy, and suddenly you've got real GDP growth plus inflation. Now, you might be thinking, okay, cool, but what does this have to do with Bitcoin hitting $250,000? Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. If you earn a salary in 2025, and you're not also accumulating financial assets, you're financially cooked. When they run this QE for poor people strategy, nominal GDP grows faster, sure, but inflation grows right alongside it. Your $75,000 salary doesn't magically become $90,000 just because the money supply expanded. But your rent, your groceries, your gas, those all go up. So, what's the logical response? You need to own assets that benefit from monetary expansion. Historically, that meant stocks and real estate. Now, it means Bitcoin and crypto, which have literally been the best performing asset class since 2009 when measured against fiat currency creation. But there's another layer to this that makes it even more explosive. Here's where the prediction gets really specific. Trump's Treasury Secretary nominee has talked about creating $3 trillion in stablecoins. $3 trillion, with a T. Think about what that means. Suddenly, billions of people around the world who don't have access to the US banking system now have dollar bank accounts. They can earn yield, they can transact globally, they can participate in DeFi. And here's the progression that happens. First, they earn some yield on stablecoins, maybe 4 to 5%. Cool. Then they realize inflation is eating that alive, so they find Athena or other protocols earning 10 to 15%. Better, but still not enough to actually build wealth. So where do they go next? They speculate. They go to decentralized exchanges and trade with leverage because it's literally the only way to escape the system where their fixed salary gets destroyed by monetary expansion. And if you're thinking, this sounds like a hyper-financialized dystopia, congratulations, you're paying attention. But here's the thing. Whether we like it or not, this is the world being built right now. Which brings us to the actual timeline for all of this. Right now, there's a Fed governor named Lisa Cook, who's standing between Trump and control of the Fed. She's facing potential legal issues, and there's intense political pressure for her to resign. If she steps down before the end of this year, Trump gets his fourth vote. Then in February 2026, all 12 Federal Reserve District Bank presidents are up for re-election, and they need approval from the Board of Governors. See how the dominoes fall? 4 votes gives Trump control to approve the district bank presidents, which gives him 7 out of 12 votes on the FOMC, which controls the Fed's balance sheet and quantitative easing. The timeline matters because Trump needs this done before the 2026 midterms. After that, political power might flip, and the window closes. So if this all plays out, what's the actual mechanism that sends Bitcoin to $250,000? When you create trillions in new fiat currency and hand it to a global population that's watching their savings get destroyed by inflation, they don't just sit on cash. They buy hard assets. Gold went up 50% this year. Where did that money come from? Probably government bonds and other low-yield instruments. Bitcoin doesn't need to replace everything. It just needs to be a better option than some of the alternatives. And with Bitcoin having a fixed supply of 21 million coins, while fiat currency supply is expanding exponentially, the math isn't complicated. More dollars chasing fewer Bitcoin equals higher prices. Hayes isn't predicting $250,000 because of some magical technical analysis. He's predicting it because if Trump gets control of the Fed and implements this monetary policy, the amount of fiat currency creation will be absolutely massive. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that nobody's talking about. Here's the uncomfortable geopolitical reality. The U.S. has $35 trillion in debt and growing. The interest payments on that debt are growing faster than the economy. That's exponential math. And exponential math doesn't care about American exceptionalism. Stablecoins spreading dollar hegemony to the developing world? That's cute, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem that the debt is mathematically unsustainable. Historically, there are only 2 ways out. Debt jubilee, just cancel it and deal with the consequences, or inflate it away, print money until the debt-to-GDP ratio improves. Guess which one politicians prefer? So here's what this all means for you. If Hayes is right about the timeline, and he's been right more often than most people want to admit, we're looking at an unprecedented monetary expansion over the next 12 to 24 months. Bitcoin at $250,000 by the end of 2025 isn't moonshot speculation. It's what happens when you combine Trump gaining Fed control, massive money printing aimed at Main Street instead of Wall Street, $3 trillion in stablecoins flooding into crypto markets, and a fixed supply asset that's already proven it performs during monetary expansion. The question isn't whether Bitcoin will benefit from this. The question is whether you'll be positioned to benefit from Bitcoin benefiting from this. Look, I get it. This sounds like some wild conspiracy theory involving presidential poker hands and Fed takeovers. But everything I just laid out is publicly available information about how the Federal Reserve's governance structure works. The play is obvious. Accumulate hard assets before the money printer goes into overdrive. Whether that's Bitcoin, gold, or other fixed supply assets, the worst-case scenario is you own scarce things in a world printing unlimited currency. If this breakdown of presidential poker and Fed control structures opened your eyes to what's actually happening behind the scenes, smash that like button and subscribe because I break down the macro moves that mainstream finance media either doesn't understand or doesn't want you to know. Drop a comment. Do you think Hayes is right about $250,000 by end of year? Or is this all just hopium with extra steps? Because I'm genuinely curious whether people understand how close we are to the most aggressive monetary expansion in modern history. The Fed control timeline is real. The Treasury stablecoin plans are real. The debt crisis is real. The only question is whether you'll be holding the assets that benefit when the inevitable happens, or whether you'll be holding the assets that get destroyed by it. Team Satoshi or Team Fiat?